Howdy, howdy, Sunday School theologians. This is Pastor Cholak. Today we're looking at Enduring Faith Bible Curriculum, Unit 2, Lesson 3, A Trap and a Release. This is the story of Daniel in the lion's den. This comes to us from Daniel chapter 6. Hear the word of the Lord. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps, to be throughout the whole kingdom, and over them 3 presidents, of whom Daniel was one, to whom these satraps should give account, so the king might suffer no loss. Then this Daniel became distinguished above all the other presidents and satraps, because an excellent spirit was in him. And the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. Then the presidents and the satraps sought to find a ground for complaint against Daniel with regard to the kingdom, but they could find no ground for complaint or any fault, because he was faithful, and no error or fault was found in him. Then these men said, "We shall not find any ground for complaint against this Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God." Then these presidents and satraps came by agreement to the king and said to him, "O King Darius, live forever. All the presidents of the kingdom, the prefects, and the satraps, the counselors, and the governors are agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an injunction that whoever makes petition to any god or man for 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the injunction and sign the document, so that it cannot be changed, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked." Therefore King Darius signed the document and injunction. When Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went to his house, where he had windows in his upper chamber open toward Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed, and gave thanks before his God, as he had done previously. Then these men came by agreement and found Daniel making petition and plea before his God. Then they came near and said before the king concerning the injunction, "O king, did you not sign an injunction that anyone who makes petition to any god or man within 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions?" The king answered and said, "The king stands fast, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be revoked." Then they answered and said before the king, "Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or the injunction you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day." Then the king, when he heard these words, was much distressed, and set his mind to deliver Daniel, and he labored till the sun went down to rescue him. Then these men came by agreement to the king, and said to the king, "Know, O king, that it is the law of the Medes and the Persians, that no injunction or ordinance that the king establishes can be changed." Then the king commanded, and Daniel was brought and cast into the den of lions. The king declared to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you." And a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords, that nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and sleep fled from him. Then at break of day the king arose and went in haste to the den of lions. As he came near to the den where Daniel was, he cried out in a tone of anguish. The king declared to Daniel, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Then Daniel said to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him. And also before you, O king, I have done no harm." Then the king was exceedingly glad, and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no kind of harm was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. And the king commanded, and those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and cast into the den of lions, they, their children, and their wives. And before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces. Then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in all my royal dominion people are to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, he who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So we have a great story, well-known story, probably one of the most well-known stories of the Old Testament. Daniel is the great last of the major prophets. Remember, we have Isaiah, Jeremiah. Jeremiah wrote Lamentations, and then Ezekiel and Daniel. So we have 5 major prophet books. Daniel's the last one. He's the shortest of the major prophets. And yet we have some of the most magnificent stories of Daniel. In Daniel, we get the 3 men in the fiery furnace, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And we get the lion's den, as we just heard. Now, I think it's cool that we have the connection between those 2 stories and all of the other information that God gives us in Daniel's prophecy is that the trusting in God is the most important thing. Now, each one of us, though, we break the law of God. We have been born in sin. In sin, our mother conceived us, David tells us in Psalm 51. And we commit all sorts of actual sins as sinners in this life. No one, not one, does any good, St. Paul says. And yet we are rescued, and the image of God, the ability to fear and love and trust in God above all things, is restored to us in our baptism. It is given to us by the work of Jesus to make us new again in his own work upon the cross. And so you and I are called to trust in God above all things. So catechism connection for this story to the first commandment, first table of the law, that's commandments 1, 2, and 3, right? First commandment, you shall have no other gods. Second commandment, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. And third commandment, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. What does this mean for the first commandment? We should fear, love, and trust in God above all things. Here we have Daniel. He is a servant in a foreign land. He is called upon to break the first commandment in order to follow the law of the Medes and the Persians. And I find it very interesting that every time they talk about the law of the Medes and the Persians, they also add that cannot be revoked, right? Well, the law of God cannot be revoked, ever. It has no end, right? It is written upon our heart. It is written in the scriptures for us. It is preached among us. And it finds its fruition, it finds its fulfillment in Jesus and in his cross, where he perfectly keeps the law for you and me. Okay, so Daniel's being called on by the presidents and the satraps and the counselors and ultimately the king to break the first commandment in order to keep this law of the Medes and the Persians. Of course, Daniel, he doesn't. He knows that the first commandment is that which cannot be broken because some human being wants that to be the case. And so he keeps the first and the third commandments. Maybe you could say all 3 of those of the first table, because he is worshiping only his God. He is calling upon the name of his God, and he is worshiping his God. He is remembering the Sabbath day. He is receiving from his God as he calls upon him 3 times a day. So, wonderful connection here to the fact that sometimes we're called upon in this world to do something that breaks the law of God. And when that happens, we need to remember that God's law supersedes all of the other things. Okay? And perhaps there's different nuances to bring this up with our children in Sunday school, but we need to remember that when God calls upon us to keep his word, there is nothing that can move us from that. And that in our trust, in our faith, that which we lay down to our God, we realize that He is the one that has the ability to keep us from all harm. Now, that doesn't mean that He has promised to do that. And we get a beautiful line from Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego when Nebuchadnezzar tells them that they need to worship the golden statue. They say, well, our God can deliver us from your hand, and if He chooses not to, we still won't do what you've asked. Right? Ultimately, He chooses to do so. The thing to remember is that this is not our reward. And though it may seem like a battle has been lost, the war has not been lost. The war has been won. And the great and beautiful foresight to you and me is the fact that the war has been won for us by Jesus on the cross. And there's no way to change that. The devil is already defeated. And so though we may lose a battle here and there, we already know that we are victorious in Jesus. For Jesus is victorious for one reason: to rescue you, to buy you back from sin, death, and the devil, and to give you life in His name. And so He guards and protects us against all danger and all evil. So this is another catechism connection to the first article of the Creed, right? He defends me against all danger, guards and protects me from all evil. All this He does only out of fatherly divine goodness and mercy, without any merit or worthiness in me. For all this it is my duty to thank and praise, serve and obey Him. Perhaps not that we do it 3 times a day like Daniel did, although that would be perfectly wonderful. And sometimes we do that. We have matins, we have vespers, we have compline. There are wonderful times and opportunities for us to pray with our families, with our community. The school, for instance, begins each day with matins, ends each day with a closing vespers of sorts. And so we too call upon the name of our God as we trust in Him above all things. All right. I hope that you enjoy the study of Daniel and the lion's den. There is a hymn that I think would be perfect for the study of that, and that is, "If Thou But Trust in God to Guide Thee." And that hymn is 700 and if I can find it, it is 750. And so, "If thou but trust in God to guide thee, and hope in Him through all thy ways, He'll give thee strength whate'er betide thee, and bear thee through the evil days. Who trusts in God's unchanging love, builds on the rock that naught can move." So if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Have a great and glorious day. God's peace to you. Bye-bye.